Hey, people. Um, so I had something that came through the other day. This is maybe 2 days ago, but it's kind of been stewing or percolating. And I've been just kind of considering, well, how can I frame this? And basically, it's a sense of what it kind of means to allow this practice, let's call it spiritual practice, the practice of engaging in both a kind of inquiry into the nature of reality, and also an active practice, meditation and connecting with the energy that is beyond ourself and beyond the immediate physical world. So in that process, what does that mean to bring that into life? And I had a conversation the other day that was really kind of, it led me to, it was like I was talking to this person, and we were just kind of like bouncing through ideas, and then I landed on something, and it kind of popped out of my mouth before I even knew what I was saying, before I even knew what I was thinking. It's like the words came out of my mouth, and then I realized what I had just thought. And the kind of origin of it had to do with recognizing that everything in our life is actually unity. So what I mean by that is, on some level, we know not that everything is going to be all right. That's too limited a way of phrasing it, because when you say everything's going to be all right, that appeases us, but it appeases us from within the realm of manifestation, where things can be not all right, and we're saying they're going to be all right. And that's not that that's not sometimes true, and that's not sometimes important to hear, but that's not the fundamental. That's not the type of grounding that we get from connecting with ultimate reality. I was saying yesterday, because it was coming through really clearly, meditation is the process, step by step and moment by moment, of identifying with reality and disidentifying from non-reality, awakening from the dream of thought, as Eckhart Tolle puts it. It's that process of discovering through experience what consciousness, the kind of a priori, like consciousness before there's anything to be conscious of, what that feels like, what that is. We can actually experience that. We can actually connect with that. And obviously, meditation is a big part of that, but also simply living our life and learning what the different dimensions of our soul and psyche are. What does it feel like to be identified with our ego? What does it feel like to be identified with our soul? What does it feel like to be identified with consciousness? Like letting these various dimensions speak through us and kind of getting a sense of that feel. So this conversation that I was having we're talking about how everything's ultimately unity, because on some level, it's not that we know everything is going to be all right, but on some level, we know everything is right. It's not things are going to turn out okay in a temporal manifest way. It's that anything that happens cannot be wrong. And so this is in the context of even like talking about conflicts that we may have. If we're in a conflict, like what I've been talking about the last couple of days, like being in some pretty intense, not necessarily conflicts, but situations where I'm having to either assert my value or defend my value or claim my value. And I've talked about the internal dimension of that, the external dimension of that, what it feels like to just be rehearsing the emotional script internally versus taking action in the world and stepping out and actually, claiming the risk of claiming our value in a tangible external way as opposed to just rehearsing the feeling of it on the inside. All of that. So as we go through that process, this process of called life, of basically having experiences that challenge us, having experiences that bolster us, that inspire us, that feel like they're oppressing us, that feel like they're dragging us down, that feel like they're uplifting us, whatever they are, right? Life, there's an upside to the wheel and a downside to the wheel. Ultimately, we have these moments of realizing that everything is unity. In other words, nothing is ever out of place. Everything about our journey is right. And there are moments in the process where we're unconditionally, absolutely, without any hesitation, convinced that that is true. We're completely convinced that it could not be otherwise. And then there are moments where we could easily be convinced that something is terribly wrong with the universe. God has made a horrible mistake. And where do we submit our comments? Right? Like who do we call? What's the hotline to call to let God know that the universe is way off track here? That's how we feel sometimes. And so what's been showing up for me in a really interesting way is and it kind of was an outgrowth of this conversation that I was having, was how we, once we've had that revelation, once we've had the experience of, I know everything is already right. Yeah, once we have the experience of just knowing that, we have the option, and little by little we gain greater and greater capacity to hold that position throughout all of our life, in every moment of our life, even and perhaps especially when we do not feel that way. That was a long, rambling sentence, so I'm going to say it again. Once we've had the experience of knowing, of connecting with that dimension where we know everything is right, everything is unity, we get the option, we become able to live our life in such a way that every moment reflects that, even when we don't feel that. And this to me is this is coming back around to like what I was starting out saying. This to me is what spiritual practice, or whatever you want to call it, is all about. Because obviously it's great to feel that rush and to feel that blissful unity and that connection to the cosmos, and that just knowing, that deep knowing that nothing can ever be wrong. But if that's the only time that we conduct ourselves as though that's the case, we're kind of missing the core lesson, which I would in some ways say is the core lesson of life. Like if you had to, again, this is kind of like Robin Holloway's theory of spirituality. So like I'm interpreting this. This is my interpretation from everything I've read. But if we always felt that way, it's almost like we wouldn't need to be on Earth. We wouldn't need to live down here. There'd be no lessons for us to learn. If there are lessons remaining for us to learn in this physical realm, this realm of limitation, of non-infinite, of seeming, right? Seemingly illusorially non-infinite space, right? We feel like our lives are limited. We feel like, I'm in a room, it has walls, it's a certain size, it's limited. My body, it has limits. The world, everything in manifestation is seemingly limited. And so the lessons that we're receiving they're from that realm. We're here for a reason. We're here to experience limitation. And if we always felt completely transcendently, blissfully aware that there's no such thing as limitation, it would be almost kind of pointless to be here, right? Because why would we go into a realm that has lessons to offer in a kind of like hard clay, concrete, grounded way, and then live in a realm that's not where our experience is something is just of like, well, none of this really matters. It's all an illusion. I think this is actually what the traditions are telling us when they say, when you become enlightened, you don't need to be reborn. Like Buddhism says, once you become enlightened, you don't need to be reborn. And in some ways, that's the goal of the practice, is to get to the point where you don't need to be reborn. Why? Because you've transcended all the lessons of this realm. Now that's a noble goal. That's a very noble goal. There's nothing wrong with that goal, but from the point of view of us on a day-to-day, as a day-to-day practice, where we maybe don't always feel like we are swimming in an endless ocean of bliss, what stance do we take towards the world? Can we take the stance towards the world and the posture towards the world and the posture towards everything in the world, all the people in the world, the difficult people in the world, the horrible things in the world? Can we take a posture that knows that everything is unity? Because this is where Chogyam Trungpa's kind of principle comes in, where he talks about, unless you develop that center, that core, that identity beyond the manifest, that identity of infinite consciousness, the identity beyond the ego, unless we can really get solidly anchored there, all we will contribute to the world is more chaos. So we might think we're fighting for a cause, or we might think we're improving the world, or whatever whatever our kind of what we see as the necessary changes in the world. We can't actually have an effect on them and be effective until we've moved beyond until we understand that everything is unity. Then our impact will be to uplift, to soothe, to offer solace, to offer compassion, to offer assistance, to change things in a positive way. Then we can offer from a clear vision what the world needs. And I think this is, this came through in a conversation, and it just felt really powerful to recognize, everything is unity. So really, my choice 99% of the time is, can I live from that space? Can I maintain that? Like that's the difference. What I'm talking about with this meditation being the place where I decide where I put my attention. Am I putting my attention on the problem, on the thing that is actually the affirmation of my low value, or am I putting my attention on reality, the present moment of reality? That decision is everything. Because if I go into the problem and I identify with the problem, I put my mind there, now I'm going to create more of the problem. I'm going to affirm my low value. I'm going to generate more and more of what I'm telling myself I hate and despise and want to get rid of, and I'm so frustrated by, but actually am totally hooked by, totally addicted to, and really it's a proxy for my fear of this larger space. Going to that larger space and living from there is a whole different level. Now my impact on the world changes completely. So yeah, this was a lot, a very philosophical post, but I feel like I could probably do this again and say it shorter, but that's been a powerful thing. It's been kind of sitting with me for a couple days, and I've been looking for how I articulate it. So that's what's coming through. Love you, folks. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you tomorrow.